Well, hello there. Welcome to Restoration's April monthly lesson. Today it is growing resilience the hard way. So I feel a little bit like today might be some harder information, or maybe it's my mood. I don't know. It's actually gorgeous here. So if you're watching this today, it's absolutely fabulous. And I kind of wish I was outside, but I will be this afternoon. So I'm okay with that. All right, resilience. So I have kind of an interesting relationship with the word resilience. I think a lot of us feel like or believe that resilience is when we've had to be in a hard situation for a long time. And I think there's truth to that. Um, I think that's how we typically think of resilience. I have come to think of resilience as not suffering. So I think sometimes we think if we're in a hard situation for a long time, that's resilience. I really do think that might actually just be suffering. So I've come to think of resilience as um, sitting in discomfort in order to make change. So when you're in a hard situation for a long time, you're sitting in discomfort, but it's not discomfort designed to create change. So last month's lesson was on managing resistance. And I talked about, I wish you guys were talking too, but um, I talked about that focusing less on the other person can help manage resistance. Understanding your values and how those become vulnerabilities can help you manage resistance. And understanding kind of your inner conflict can help you manage resistance. Well, today we're going to talk about how to do hard things in order to grow resilience. So I have a few examples today. My first one is, I don't know if you know what an umbrella plant is, but it's kind of a big bushy thing. It can get really tall and spindly, but if you do it right, it's like a nice big potted indoor plant. So I got an umbrella plant a million years ago, and it got to be, well, you can't tell, but it's like, I don't know, got to be about 3.5, 4 feet tall and super spindly. It had like the 2 offshoots. And I was like, this just can't be right. So I did a little reading and I read that I could just cut pieces off and start them in water and have new umbrella plants. I saw one little thing that said, be patient, it might take a while. So I cut off a bunch of pieces, and they've been in water for, I want to say 3 going on 4 weeks, and they are just starting to get roots. This is my analogy about I'm having to sit in the discomfort of having plants in water all over my kitchen counter and not being able to plant them and not knowing if they're going to work. So I'm having to just sort of sit there in discomfort, hoping that it'll work to grow more plants, and actually it is. So that's kind of that's a very, very minor example. Another example is sitting in the discomfort of learning a new job. So let's say you've had a job in one field and you get a job in another field. You're going to have to go to this new job and you're going to have to be uncomfortable because you don't know this field. This is a whole new field for you. So you can sit in discomfort for a very long time and just not bother to learn the new stuff, or not take the time to make friends at your new employer and suffer. Or you can go outside your comfort zone, try some hard things, be vulnerable in what you don't know, learn some things, and create change that way. So, you know, the resilience is in the actions you take to relieve discomfort. So, a couple things. In so growing resilience the hard way is a little bit like putting the umbrella plant in a bunch of water and hoping for the best. It does require some patience. So I'm going to ask you to try some different things, and it's going to require some patience if they don't work the first time. It's going to require a little bit of patience with yourself when you're resistant to trying them. But I don't want you to rely on patience, because if you rely on patience, like I'll do this hard thing when I feel better or when it doesn't seem so hard. If you fall back on patience, you'll never actually build the resilience you need to build to create change. So going back to the idea of the resistances to change, I want one thing to stick with you today, which is if you are resistant to change, that is an area where you need to build your resilience. So if you are resistant to seeing the high conflict person as anything other than completely pathological and a villain, if you are resistant to that, that means you don't have any resilience around being able to see them as something in addition to all of that. So I think it requires resilience to say, this person's really hurt me. They are objectively disordered or villainous or mean or whatever. And they, they're not going to get help, and they're a human. And, so there's a discomfort in sort of letting them off the hook or giving them any credit, but when you can do some of that, them being in the way of your growth starts to go away. If you have resistance to changing how you manage your values with a high conflict person, that means you're not yet resilient in being able to sit with the discomfort of someone else thinking that you have no integrity, or someone else thinking that you're stealing all their money, or someone else thinking that you are a bad person. When you have resilience, when you can sit in the discomfort of somebody thinking those things about you and still be okay. And then the inner conflict piece of it too. Like there's a discomfort in sitting with the parts of ourselves that we kind of want to just push away, so the part that's angry or the part that, keeps taking it or whatever it is. It requires resilience to sit with that part, understand what that part needs from you, and then giving that part what it needs. So I want to say too about sitting in discomfort, like really nobody I don't think people actually go like, I want to sit in discomfort. That would be so awesome. I think we choose some discomforts over other discomforts. So we'll take the discomfort we know, which is the conflict with this other person, versus the discomfort we don't know, which is interacting with that person differently and not knowing what the consequences might be. So I'm just reading my notes here. I think some of you might say, I already sit in discomfort though. And I'm not suffering. I'm just sitting in discomfort because that other person keeps doing all these things to me. And to that, I would say, yes, you are sitting in discomfort, and that discomfort somehow feels easier than a different discomfort. And I know this to be true from my own experience. It was much easier to sit in the discomfort of feeling like I had no control, like I was always going to be on the receiving end, that I couldn't win, than it ever has been or ever was in sitting in the discomfort of saying, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not putting up with that. Sitting with the discomfort of like, go ahead and think I'm an awful person. I don't care. Like that, for a long time, that was a harder discomfort for me to sit in. So, but that's the discomfort where the change can happen. So let me keep going. Some of you may or may not have been in or are in support groups for like narcissistic abuse support or some kind of other sort of support group other than ours. Of course, we have a good one. And a lot of times in those support groups, they allow us to sit in our current suffering because they're not challenging us to feel a different type of discomfort. That's part of why I do the work I do, started the group, started Restoration, is because I wanted to have a group for you where we challenge the current discomfort as a way to encourage change, and as a way to create resilience. There's no resilience being gained in sharing your story over and over and over. The resilience is in, here's something you can do differently. It's not going to be comfortable, but you could try it anyway. So, a few things, going back to last month's lesson, one of the things you can do is sit in that discomfort of getting to know your parts differently. And I don't think I've kind of gone through the whole parts process. That might be in an upcoming lesson, but there's a whole process you can use to get to know your parts. Because if you're in a high conflict relationship, you've got a part that's angry, I'm guessing, a part that's really hurt, a part that's frustrated, probably a part that's hopeless, a part that dreams of a different life. So all of those parts of you are very valid, and they're all trying to do something really good for you. And you might need to sit with some of those parts so that they don't have to kind of take over your mouth and your behavior to keep you stuck. So an example of this with the parts would be like an angry part. It feels good and justifiable and righteous to be angry at a high conflict person who is making your life a living hell. Like that's just a given, I think. And that anger sometimes is working too hard for you. So it creates a resistance to doing anything different because you are justified in your anger. So what I would ask you to do if you're kind of in anger, and I know most of us are like, I'm not angry, I'm just upset, which is fine. But if you're feeling that way all the time, one thing I would ask you to try is to thank the angry part. Say, you've done a great job trying to keep me focused on not getting hurt again. Really love you for that. And I want to try not being angry the next time I get a communication from that person or the next time I have to interact with them. That's going to feel uncomfortable, to set the anger aside and smile and say hi, or to set the anger aside and send a nice email that has the who, what, when, where, and how, and no why, no becauses. That's going to feel uncomfortable. And yet that's how you gain resilience. So thinking about new communication strategies, I mean, these are the things to try, and these are the things that can help you build resilience. So I know we had a lesson about like not using why or because, using and instead of but. So all of those things are communication strategies that can help, and instituting those may increase your discomfort temporarily, because that's not how you usually communicate with this person. You don't know what their reaction is going to be because you haven't communicated with them that way. And so it's going to feel uncomfortable to do it. And I'm going to encourage you to do it anyway, because what you will learn is that you won't die from trying something new. You're not going to die from their reaction to you trying something new either. At our base level, we are afraid that if we do something that's really uncomfortable, we might die. And I put quotes on it because we're not going to actually die. However, inside ourselves, you've got some little part in there that's like, oh, like I might die. I might die because this is way too hard and I don't know what they're going to do to me. And what if I lose everything? Like there's a worst case scenario tape running. So I really would like you to try these new communication strategies. Maybe you try them on somebody besides a high conflict person first, get a little practice under your belt, but then try them. Try them in your communications with the high conflict person in your life. Saying things like, I know you meant well, and here's kind of how that went, versus I know you meant well, but you really screwed it up. Like those kinds, like just switching and but is a different thing. Or not explaining yourself. Like there's a discomfort in not explaining ourselves because, and that ties to the values. If somebody's accused us of something, we want to explain ourselves so that they don't think we're a bad person or they know we have integrity. It's way more uncomfortable and yet much better at building resilience to stop explaining yourself. You're going to sit in that discomfort. And you're also going to know, I didn't just paint a big target on myself by giving them 1,000 justifications for my behavior. I just said, here's what I did. So any and all of those, especially maybe the like not justifying yourself, not saying why or because, aren't going to feel great, and they're going to build resilience. You will know that you can change the pattern with this person without the world falling apart. You will know that you internally, as hard as it is to do something new, you're not going to have a heart attack from the stress and die. You're going to get through it and go, oh, okay. I just went off that diving board and I landed in a pool and I might have belly flopped, might not have felt great, but I didn't die from jumping off that diving board. Part of building resilience is, again, just trying things. I think of it as like giving something a whirl. I used to have a good acronym for it. I don't remember what it is. But you can. I'd be curious if you can come up with a good acronym for whirl. And actually, maybe I'll look it up while we're talking. Because giving it a whirl helps lower the stakes a little bit. I think part of our resistance to trying something new is that the stakes feel so high. Like if I try this new thing and I fail, it's going to be even worse than it was had I not tried this new thing. But the stakes are rarely that high. So you could be in a high stakes divorce situation or child custody situation and take out the word but and add the word and it's not going to weaken any of your case. So that's lower stakes than we think. I think we think the stakes are very, very high, and they don't have to be. Okay, I'm looking for whirl. Oh my gosh, do I have it? Ugh, I don't have it. So it was in my head at one point, the acronym for whirl, but I don't have it anymore. Okay, so think about the stakes being not as high. I know some of you are in pretty desperate places, a lot of court involvement, a lot of things at stake, children, financial assets, your freedom to move out of state, like all of those things are at stake, and which makes the stakes really high. But the stakes aren't as high if you're just changing a few words around. So I want you to keep that in mind as you try to give something a whirl, that the stakes these stakes are high. The stakes for changing a few words in how you communicate are not that. They're not this. They're down here. So it's okay to try to be uncomfortable down here because it's not going to impact up here. So I want you to keep that in mind too, that there are big stakes, but changing your communication is not one of them. I also encourage you to be reflective on when you try new things, when you sit in the discomfort of trying new things, they might work or they may not work. So that's where patience can come in. I think consistency is important. So try it more than once to see if it'll work. And if it's still not working, if you're still not feeling better, if the pattern hasn't changed with the high conflict person, I think it's okay to sort of examine it again, re-examine. What could I do a little bit differently in what I've already changed? What can I imagine myself saying that would really change this pattern quite a bit? It's okay to just retool things. That goes along with the stakes not being so high, because we're not operating here, we're operating down here on these little strategies, and the stakes aren't that high. It's okay to try something new. And if that one doesn't work, try something else new. All along the way, what you are doing is building your resilience because you're trying something new, it works, it doesn't work. You're uncomfortable, you try something else, works or doesn't work. Along the way, you're learning, you're not dying from it, and you're getting a whole bunch more experience sitting in that discomfort and learning that you're going to live. I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but the bingo game, I apologize if we've talked about this before. Maybe we haven't. I really, really like the kind of bingo game as a way to build resilience. So the way it works is you just print a blank bingo sheet, just get one off the internet. And in it, in those squares, what I want you to write are things about the high conflict person. So things they always say to you, things, mannerisms they always have that drive you crazy. Things they do, like they hide money or they, have a flare up on your holiday weekend or whatever, or on your birthday or something. I want you to fill up as many squares as you can with things that the high conflict person says or does, especially like the ones that they always do and always are like designed to get you, right? To kind of poke at you. This exercise does so many good things for you. One, it captures that the person you're dealing with has 25 or fewer tricks. I have not met anybody yet, and I dare you to prove me wrong, that has been able to fill out an entire sheet and then some. So what you learn from this is that this high conflict person with whom the stakes are very high, who feels very big in your life, has 25 tricks or fewer. They don't have a bottomless, endless pit of tricks. They are not this unexplainable, ununderstandable creature that just morphs into all this bad stuff all the time and you can't ever get a handle on what it's going to be. They have a set amount of tricks and you know them and you can write them down. The second thing, and this is really how it applies to resilience, when you have interactions with that person, I want you to either have the sheet in front of you if you're not with them or have it in your mind. And I want you to be looking for the things that are on the sheet. So a lot of us avoid communication with a high conflict person because we don't want to hear these things. We don't want to see these things. We don't want to hear them. They make us mad. They make us sad. They make us really frustrated. So we want to avoid them, which means that we never kind of build resilience about being with the high conflict person. So if you are looking forward to, like, when are they going to say the royal we? When are they going to make some crack about where I live? When are they going to put down how I look? If you start to look forward to those things, it brings you into the interaction with that person differently. And you learn that those things aren't so scary anymore. They're like a prize. Like, oh, I figured that person out. So, I mean, the benefits of this bingo game are just enormous. You learn that you do know how they operate. You can capture them on one piece of paper, so they're not that clever. They're just not that clever. And in fact, I haven't done this yet, but I would be willing to bet that most people have at least 2 or 3 in common with each other. You start to look forward to the interaction, even though you might be nervous about it. You're going to start to look forward to, am I outsmarting this person? Like, I know what they're going to say and do. So why am I so scared about it? They've done it 1,000 times before and nothing bad. The world hasn't ended. So I would encourage you to do that, especially if you've got sort of an active thing going on. If you're not actively in a high conflict relationship right now, it's still kind of an interesting exercise to see if you can capture them in 25 squares or less. But this is certainly a better resilience tool for those of you who are actively working with a high conflict person. Now, I've had people say to me, is this just so that I can make fun of that person? And the answer is absolutely not. This isn't about making fun of them. This is about lowering their stature in your life. This is about bringing you to the table feeling like you have some power. And by the table, like any interaction with them, it's about a pat on your own back about like, I know this person. I know the tricks that they're going to use. And it's going to allow you to know that they can't get to you if though, like, especially anymore. Like, you want to talk about how you make more money than me? Fine. That's great because I just got to cover all. You want to talk about how your parenting's way better than my parenting? Fine. I know it's not. The kids know it's not. Even if it is, I'm not at risk of losing my kids just because I don't parent the same as you. So bring it. Like, you can be the best parent. I don't care. So it really does empower you to do some things differently that way. Let's see. One of the things, talking about like family relationships for a second and not just partnership relationships. One of the worries in a family relationship is that if you try some new things, if you don't follow the pattern, you might get cut off from the family. That's a really high stakes fear. I get that for sure. But like with partnership relationships, I don't think switching and but with your high conflict mother or your high conflict father or sister or brother-in-law or whomever it is, um, whoever it is, I don't think that's going to get you kicked out or cut off. I think you can be subtle, and I think you can influence the patterns without having to make a big production out of it so that they know you're doing that. So that's the other piece of growing your resilience is you don't have to announce to the world, I'm going to do a whole bunch of different stuff now, and it's not going to feel good for me, but it's going to work on you. That's not going to build your resilience. That's just like drawing a big target on yourself and like handing them the arrows. Instead, I want you to think of this as subtlety, as flying under the radar, as giving yourself easy opportunities to build your own resilience. So I wouldn't show anybody the bingo card. I wouldn't tell the high conflict person that you're going to use different communication strategies on them. I would not tell them that you are going to stop worrying about whether they're a narcissist and just focus on their behaviors. I wouldn't tell them any of that. They lost the privilege of knowing your thought process probably a long time ago. Instead, use these strategies for you. Use them, try them, be subtle about it, and see if you start to feel like, I can do this different. I know that I'm not going to die the next time my ex says we, when they're talking about themselves and their, 5 months old new partner, like the relationship's 5 months old. I can handle it if they make fun of how much money I have. I can be just fine with any of it. This is all about you building your resilience, because once you have that resilience that I can do a hard thing, I can do something different that makes me uncomfortable. And not only can I do it, but I can survive it and I can learn from it. Like, the world then is yours. That is one of the keys to freedom from a high conflict relationship, is when you know that you aren't going to die from this relationship. I'm at risk maybe of saying this in every lesson, and maybe here's what I don't do. I don't rewatch the lessons. So if I've also said this, then I apologize. But I have the thing in my office about the bird. So if this is new to you, yay. I absolutely love this quote. And it says, a bird sitting in a tree is not afraid of the branch breaking, because the bird does not put its trust in the branch. The bird puts its trust in its own wings. So building your resilience by doing hard things is trusting your own wings. You're not trusting whether the high conflict person is going to behave this time, or if they're going to choose not to throw the darts at you, or if they're going to choose to be kind this go round. You're putting your trust in, I don't care what they do, because I've already captured it on a bingo sheet and I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm trusting that I can do new things. I can take control of my life. I can seek freedom because I have my own wings. I'm not dependent on them to change. Okay, I think that was my soapbox for the day. I don't have anything else on growing resilience, but I really am curious, if you watch this, if you would put some comments on this one. It'll be in the monthly lessons, and then up at the top, it'll say past. Because, or you know what, don't even do that. Don't do it there. Maybe put it in the chat group. So maybe I'll put a prompt in there. I would love to hear how each of you try something new that's uncomfortable and what the results are. I think that's how we can hold ourselves. Well, I think that's how we can support each other and hold ourselves accountable, is by saying, okay, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to give you an example real fast before I let you go. So my ex and I, we don't communicate, and that's fine. Like, we don't have any need to anymore. And a few years ago, one of my kids was coming into town, and I had plans with that kid. And when he texted me, he said, well, now dad wants to do something at that same time. And in the past, what I would have done was tell my kid to tell his dad, like, that's not going to work. Or I would just change my plans. That was more often what I would do. And I was like, nope, this is going to feel weird. I'm not going to like this. I don't know how he's going to react. I'm just going to text him myself. I haven't texted him in years. So I texted him and I said, I understand that you want to do this thing. We've already got plans at this time. So as soon as our plans are done, he's free to do that thing with you. And I got back a thumbs up, not a diatribe, not a novel of all the awful things about me. Oh, I think I also said, I hope you're having a great day. So it was a thumbs up. And then I was like, and then I got back, thanks, you too. Frankly, that was kind of a miracle. And if you have been in hard relationships, that seems out of the realm of possibility. Believe me, I thought the same thing. So my point is, I did something different. I learned that I could just text him directly and say, that's not going to work for us, but here's how I'm going to kind of finesse it for you. And it could be just fine. I didn't die from that. My kids certainly didn't have to be put in the middle. And then I didn't have to manage my own feelings about, why do I always have to change my plans? Well, it turns out I don't have to always change my plans. I just have to kind of stand up for them. Okay, that's my last personal story of the day. So anyway, I look forward to seeing your comments in the chat. I'm going to put a prompt in there as soon as I'm done here. This is going to go in, I'll put a link to this after it's processed. I'll put a link to this in the chat area, and then it'll also be in the past monthly lessons for you to see. I think we've had some trouble accessing them, which is always going to be 100% on me because technology. So if you have trouble accessing this video, you won't know to text me if you can't access the video. Anyway, I'm just going to say, see, this is hard. I want to say, let me know in the chat if you can't access the video, but I don't know why I'm saying that right now. Okay, clearly I have spring fever, so I'm checking out. I'm heading off, and I hope really that you have good experience trying some of these new things. All right, talk to you later. Bye. I got to find the button. Bye.